then we will, but hang on. We will continue then with another presentation on similar matter, but maybe a little bit from another angle or direction. I would like to give the floor to Anne Toebes, who is Curriculum Development Facilitator at Munster Technological University. So please, Anne.
Thank you very much, Anders. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you today about how program design, learning outcomes, the qualifications framework, and RPL all connect together at MTU. Now, it's probably similar to a lot of other institutions, and maybe the audience can verify that as we go along. I suppose maybe just to introduce myself, first of all, before joining CIT, as it was called then, I spent 8 years working in pharmaceutical manufacturing, both in the UK and Ireland. And then on joining CIT, I have lectured on a number of programs, but mainly on the GMP, Good Manufacturing Practice programs. And I've lectured on them and coordinated them as well. And these programs, I suppose, attract predominantly mature students who often have a lot of relevant prior learning before joining our programs. And RPL means to these students that they don't have to sit through the same learning again. And in relation to time was mentioned by Susanna there earlier as well. Mature students often have so many outside commitments that, you know, it enables them to engage in third level education. Okay, so that's my background, I suppose. These days, I'm a curriculum development facilitator, which means I'm not lecturing, but I'll go through what my role entails later on, okay, in this presentation. Now, I have some slides that I'd like to share with you, if that's okay. Okay, so I've given you an introduction to what I'm going to talk about there. But first, I suppose, sorry, just get the mouse in the right place. I suppose because we're such a new entity, and Irene mentioned it earlier as well, we're since the 1st of January this year, Cork Institute of Technology, that's based in Cork, County Cork, and the Institute of Technology in Tralee, which is based in Kerry, have merged to become Munster Technological University. So you can see there the map of Ireland. You can see that IT Tralee was based in the southwest, and we're based in the very south of Ireland. And now, as we've come together, we have 6 campuses instead of the 4 and 2 that we had. We have 18,000 students, over 140 programs, and more than 2,000 staff. Back to today's question, I suppose. How does RPL connect with program design, learning outcomes, and the qualifications framework? Okay, and over the next few slides, I'll try and explain our perspective on this at MTU. First of all, I'd like to talk about program design. There's a whole spectrum of curriculum design models out there, and the particular model used will depend on the goals of the designers. I'll present one here that is often used in the design of engineering and science programs, and it's called the backward design model. So with this model, we start with identifying the graduate attributes, you know, the transferable skills, for instance, communication skills, problem solving skills, critical thinking, teamwork, leadership skills, those learnings. And also we will identify at the start the specific academic goals of the program. And these feed into the generation of program outcomes. I know some people from the chat earlier, I see in some organizations, these are called program learning outcomes, PLO, whereas in MTU, we call them program outcomes. Now, these program outcomes are broad statements describing what the graduates will know and be able to do on successful completion of the program. Now, for all our major awards, that's awards with 60 ECTS credits or more, there are 8 learning outcomes. And these are in the area of knowledge, skill and competence. We have shorter programs as well, you know, programs with up to 60 ECTS credits, and they'd be called special purpose awards or minor awards. And these programs don't always have the whole 8 program outcomes addressing the 8 strands of learning. Okay. These program outcomes then influence the modules that are making up the program, and consequently the module learning outcomes. These module learning outcomes then are mapped back to the program outcomes to make sure that the program outcomes can be achieved in the program. Okay. There should also be constructive alignment within the modules themselves. And what I mean here is that the assessment strategy should demonstrate that the learning outcomes have been achieved. For example, if the learning outcome states that students will be able to collaborate to solve problems when they complete the module successfully, then there must be an assessment in the module, you know, that involves problem solving in a you know, so the students have to demonstrate that they meet that learning outcome. Also, it should be evident that the students have been given the appropriate learning opportunities to achieve the learning outcomes through studying the content and through the teaching and learning strategies that have been incorporated into the module. All this design activity that we've laid out there, it all has to be achieved within the constraints of MTU's quality policies. And I suppose what I mean here is our examples of these restrictions or constraints are, you know, that, you know, all our modules are 5 ECTS credits in size, apart from some exceptions such as placement or a capstone research project. We have 2 30 credit semesters and so on, you know, so our programs have to be designed within those types of constraints. And I suppose one thing I didn't say at the start is that because, you know, MTU is such a new entity, our quality policies and RPL policies haven't merged yet. So when I'm talking today about MTU, I'm really talking about the MTU Cork policies. Should have said that at the start. But, you know, there's a lot of work going on to merge all these policies at the moment. So hopefully we will have a shared approach in the not too distant future. So the next part of this slide is about our award standards. Okay, so I think so far I've shown you how our program outcomes and our module learning outcomes all link together, and how our assessments and our learning all link with the learning outcomes. So hopefully you can see that everything is connected there. So the next part I have to explain is how our programs connect up with the qualifications framework. And the link here is are the award standards that we've mentioned, that a number of people have mentioned already this morning. So our award standards have been adopted from QQI, Quality and Qualifications Ireland. And yeah, so, and these award standards are based on the level indicators and the award type descriptors of the National Framework of Qualifications. Okay. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this diagram. I've seen it already this morning in Irene's presentation. By mapping the programs to our award standards, we show where they fit on the National Framework of Qualifications, which is in blue there. And MTU programs start at level 6 and go right up to level 10, the doctoral program there. And you can see on that diagram as well how the NFQ in Ireland articulates with EQF, which is in kind of a mustard or yellow color there as well. Okay. Now, to show you an example of our mapping process, the first example here I have is a printout or an excerpt, I suppose, from our curriculum management system of the mapping of the learning outcomes to the program outcomes. So the program outcomes are across the top there from PO1 to PO8, and they represent knowledge, skill, and competence. And on the left-hand column going down, we have the list of modules in the program. And this table shows at a glance how well the program outcomes are met by the modules. And it may prompt the designers to revisit or to remove certain modules and replace them with other modules so that the program outcomes are well met by the program itself. Okay, so that's an excerpt from our mapping printout from our curriculum management system. Now, there are further tables provided in our mapping system, which shows us exactly which learning outcomes of the modules address the various program outcomes, but I haven't included that. I think you kind of hopefully get the idea from that. Now, the next slide I have is in relation to how we map our programs to the award standards. Okay, so I know the print probably is very small here, but the idea is to give you an idea of how we do it. So this template is for the Bachelor of Business Honours. So it's a mapping template for a level 8 program. And on the left-hand column, we have the generic standard statements of the award standards. And by matching our programs to these, it will confirm that the program meets the level 8 standard on the NFQ. And the business standards to the right are an elaboration of these generic standards for each strand of learning. And by demonstrating that the program maps to the specific business elements, it confirms that the program meets the specific business standard at level 8 as well. So the program outcomes are listed in the middle column, so the designers can put in the program outcomes there. And there's an opportunity on the right-hand side then under supporting statement to allow the designers to document any additional features of the program that enable the program outcome or the program to meet the award standards. Okay. So where does RPL fit in all of this? So in MTU, to obtain RPL in a module, a learner must show that they have achieved the learning outcomes of that module. And this is true whether the learning is formal, informal, or non-formal, and whether the learning is for credit or advanced entry. Okay, the difference between, I suppose, getting RPL for a module and completing the module in the more traditional sense by attending lectures and practicals and so on is the assessment piece. That's the main difference. And the conventional student can be assessed in a range of ways, like, you know, doing an exam, submitting reports, essays, doing group projects and so on. And to be honest, they're not that focused on the learning outcomes at all. They're focused on the assessment piece that the lecturer gives them. Whereas the RPL student is assessed solely on how they meet the learning outcomes. So to help the RPL student and embed RPL in our system, it's very important that the learning outcomes are written as well as possible. And that's been referenced already this morning as well. In the next few slides, I have a few suggestions that should help boost the connection between the program and RPL. And the first suggestion is that the learning outcomes should be clearly articulated. And I have an example here of 2 learning outcomes, one possibly written better than the other. Let's have a look. Okay, so the first one there is use software in digital media. That's the first learning outcome. Now, if you were an RPL student and were asked to show that you can do this, You may get the answer right and you mightn't, okay? So what we're suggesting is that you have more detail in the learning outcome to guide the RPL students, so they're clear on what's required. So this is the alternative then. So you can see that use a digital software editing program to create, edit and deploy digital media materials gives an awful lot more guidance to the RPL student. And it's more likely that they'll be able to do that without an awful lot of guidance, you know. Okay, so my next suggestion then is that the learning outcomes should be readily measurable. You know, the first example here is demonstrating understanding of heat transfer. What we find is very difficult to measure understanding by itself. So instead of the first learning outcome, if it was replaced with perform heat transfer calculations involving conduction, convection, radiation, you know, the second learning outcome makes the required level of understanding clearer, and this will really help the RPL student as well. Third suggestion, learning outcomes should not be unnecessarily specific. Now, I've got an example here. This is one from a business studies program. Create accounts using Sage 50 Professional. Now, Sage 50 Professional, I understand, is a very common accounting software package. Now, compare it with this one. Create accounts using an accounting software package. Yeah, you'd have to ask yourself, I suppose, here, if the appropriate skills can be acquired, whatever accounting package is used, then the second learning outcome is preferable, and it is likely to suit the RPL student better as well. Okay, my next suggestion is in relation to the accuracy of learning outcomes. That, you know, learning outcomes should accurately reflect all the different strands of learning of the module. For instance, if students are assessed by completing group projects, then the competence of teamwork should feature in the learning outcomes. That doesn't always happen, you know, and anytime we come across it, we try and weed that out of our system. That, you know, RPL candidates, of course, are usually very strong on the competence strands of learning, like teamwork, especially those with informal learning in the workplace as well. So it should be captured if it is a learning outcome of the module, it should be captured in the learning outcomes. My last suggestion is in sorry, press too many enters there. My last suggestion is on designing clear pathways for access, transfer and progression. This may involve creating advanced entry guidelines. And what I mean is spelling out exactly what is considered equivalent to the earlier years of study on the programme. I suppose that is similar to what Susanna was talking earlier about. And perhaps designing appropriate bridging studies to help fill common gaps that RPL candidates may have. Both of these strategies serve to help the RPL candidate and to embed RPL in the admissions processes. And finally, on my role as Curriculum Development Facilitator at MTU, I have a number of different functions. You can see them listed there. I work with teams designing new programs and reviewing programs. I deliver training to teams on module and program design. The idea is that it's better for people to know upfront how to do it rather than to submit something and for us to have to fix it afterwards. I am involved in organising external panels to review new programs, and I'm also often a member of these panels. I've been involved in developing quality policies and procedures, and a key role I have is in relation to moderating new and amended modules before they are approved and made available on our curriculum management system. Now, I hope I've made it clear how our programme outcomes, learning outcomes, award standards and the qualification framework and RPL all fit together. and how the links with RPL can be strengthened as well. Thank you all very much for listening this afternoon, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.